hopefully those issues get fixed, and then we get them back as QA and say, was the issue addressed, and do we think there are any other outliers that could arise from how they fixed it?
Sure, that makes sense. It's funny you mentioned reproducing of bugs. I think in my old job, I was doing systems analyst work, and a big part of it was test and evaluation of different equipment for the military. And when we would test the new stuff, reproducing some of those things was always the hardest part, because we would have what we would do is called environmental testing. So we'd put it in a chamber and we'd run it through like high temperature, low temperature, wind, altitude, like all that sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you'd get something that would break, and because we didn't have ample spares often enough because of budgets and other things, it was hard to find exactly what broke the thing, because you'd leave it in the chamber for 24 hours at a super high temperature. You don't know when it broke, you don't know where it broke, you don't know exactly what part of it broke.
Right, just so that it no longer works.
Exactly. And so when you'd write the test report and send it up the chain, you'd be like, hey, it broke when we did this long test, but that's it. And so I'd imagine for you guys, there's probably some obscure bugs that are extremely hard to reproduce. I think you mentioned one when we were talking last time. I think it had to do with turrets.
I did.
Do you want to go into that a little bit?
I would love to. It's one of my favorite. It's one of my favorite stories about my time as quality assurance. So at the time, I was working on Smite, which is not my like Evil Mojo's game. It's Titan Forge's game, which is another subsidiary or game studio within Hi-Rez. They do. It's a MOBA, and other games in the same genre include like Dota, Defense of the Ancients, and League of Legends.
Mm-hmm.
Probably the two most popular in the genre. So for this issue, and part of what we as QA do, although it can wear on you, is we interact with the community.
I'm sure that's fun.
I guess the way I would put it is that people who are passionate about the games they play can have that passion. I'm going to say like leak through, I suppose, in their interactions with the community and the game developers. Yeah. But so that was the first thing I learned, actually, was how to deal with people online, essentially. They don't even have a QA team. How did they miss this? But this issue in particular, we were getting reports that Vulcan, who puts down a turret, that his turret was invisible, completely invisible. And we couldn't figure it out because in every environment we went into, his turret was right there. It was visible. It was like there was no issues. And we tested multiple different ways. And we said, okay, well, maybe this report, maybe something else is going on. We can't really, I don't have the time. I can't spend 2 days testing this turret when we have other content that we have to put in the game. But we kept over time hearing different reports that his turret was invisible. His turret was invisible. It's really a problem. And at some point we're like, okay, so what do we got to do to figure out why his turret is invisible? And somebody mentioned that most of the reports seem to be from Spanish-speaking users, which we thought was really interesting. Mm-hmm. Because why are English-speaking or German-speaking or French-speaking or whatever users not reporting the same issue? So at that point, I was the one who actually ended up finding the issue, which was kind of cool. But at that point, we started looking at different things. Like, okay, so maybe it's something to do with Spanish or whatever. So I went through all the languages, and I went at the time I was trying to think, what could it possibly be? So I decided I would go through all the languages on every map and at every level of the ability. There are like 4 or 5 levels of the ability. Does it show up? So I switched to, or I went through all the languages actually, but I switched to French, switched to German, like level 1, drop the turret, level 2, drop the turret, level 3, drop the turret on every single map that we had. And as it turns out, on the Joust map in Spanish and Portuguese only, at level 1 only, the turret was invisible. So not at level 2, not in French, not on any other map, but that specific map, that specific two languages, and that specific level of the ability, the turret was invisible. And that was mind blowing because like, in my head, I'm thinking like, how could that happen? But of course we've talked about how complicated and convoluted these things can be. It could be any number of things. I believe it was an incorrect resource string in the Spanish and Portuguese language pack that was being imported on that map and was causing the texture to fail to load, which is just absolutely wild to me. But so we ended up finding that issue. We fixed it and didn't get any thank yous because, like that's the way it should be. Yeah, it shouldn't have happened in the first place. But I think that's my favorite bug so far. It's just how specific is that, right?
Yeah, it kind of just goes to show how like complex the coding actually is, that it could break just that one little thing. And it's also one of the reasons why didn't they catch that? It's because who would have caught that? It's like I think probably when you're going through the testing, it's like you don't have the time to do that. I think probably. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's very accurate. I mean, there are only so many things that we can test in a certain amount of time. So, at the time, I did go through every language in the game. I would launch the game in every language. I would play like a practice match in the language. But I don't have time to go through. There are over 120 gods at this point in Smite. I don't have time to go through every rank of every ability of 120 gods on every map in every language.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot. It goes back to sort of like the resources and the manpower that you were mentioning earlier, but I think there was a stat that you mentioned, I think when we were talking the other day, that like there's more gameplay hours in the first day of game release than there will be done like for all of testing. On
any semi-popular game, as soon as it's released, like within the first day, like I said, there will be more man hours of gameplay interacting with the code and the game than is feasible for any company to do within the development cycle, just because of the nature of so many eyes and so many different interactions versus the size of the dev team and the testing team. And that's where you often hear those day one bugs of like, how couldn't they catch this? Well, it happens specifically because there were 50,000 people who were doing the same exact thing, and it broke in a very specific set of circumstances, kind of thing.
Yeah, there was my old roommate in college in GTA 4 or 5. On one specific part of the map, you could swim into the water and go under like a bridge or something like that. But as soon as you went under it, you would pop up like under the ground, and you could just run under the ground and go shoot people from below, and they couldn't see, like they didn't know where it was coming from, and you could just do that, and it was only you had to go on like this one specific part of the bridge, and like you probably know those people that just look for those things to mess with, like whether it's like shortcuts or little glitches here and there. I remember one time when I was little, I was playing Mario Kart with my little brother. We were on Rainbow Road, and he fell off at some point during the race, and it put him a lap ahead in first place. He went from last to first, and we tried for weeks to find that spot where he fell off, and we couldn't find it.
For not only for like the gameplay content stuff, but also for the bug stuff, I have something like Shadowplay running most times at this point, so that if something wild happens, it can be like, all right, go back, clip that kind of thing, because that like breaking the game intentionally or accidentally, I think is really interesting and really fun.
Yeah, although it was GameCube, so couldn't really do Shadowplay.
That's true.
But even so, it's just like there's all sorts of people that like that'll just try for hours and hours and hours to find random little things that like you guys in the testing world, or well, when you were in QA, well, you still do testing now, I think, right?
I mean, I look at all of the stuff that I put in myself.
Yeah, but like the time that it would take you to find all those little things is just not feasible. Like if you were working on Mario Kart, it would not be feasible for you to spend 3 weeks to find that one spot that like in all the times that we played, like we played a lot. and we only found that spot one time
Right.
by accident.
Now imagine and then also just even think about spending, even if your boss told you, hey, I need you to do this for a month. Can you imagine spending a month for 9 to 5 every single weekday just running off the map, like from here and then here and then here and then
That
here?
would be
like
horrible.
it would be
You would lose track.